Darwin Platform Group of Companies is one of the fastest growing diversified Indian conglomerates with global footprints. It is setting up offices globally and tying up with companies across the globe from multiple sectors. The company has ventured into real estate and construction, stockbroking and finance, arms and ammunition, mining, airlines and many other sectors.
Hello and welcome to Easynomics. I'm Siddharth Zarabi, and on the topic of the show today, we are joined by Yashwant Deshmukh, founder director of Seawater, Sanjay Kumar, Psephologist and Professor at CSDS, and Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist at the Bank of Baroda. And viewers, if you are wondering what that topic is, it's a little offbeat from the usual focus on Easynomics, but it has to do with all of the women, the Nari Shakti of India. The focus on today's show is why are all political parties across the board chasing the woman voter? Starting with Madhya Pradesh, pretty much most states have come out with schemes and SOPs to woo the woman voter. Even the Aam Aadmi Party in its most recent budget for Delhi has jumped once again on the bandwagon. And this brings into focus the key question: have women in India, long underrepresented in all manner of public life, economic life, business and politics, have they now arrived? Has the women constituency become so big that all parties need to pay in some ways their dues and gratitude to the woman voter? First up, I want to go to Yashwant Deshmukh for setting the context in this regard. Yashwant, we've seen election upon election and the increasing influence of the woman voter. Explain this to the average viewer. Why and what does this really imply?
Well, simply, first of all, the biggest thing is arithmetic, because if you look at it this way, gender equationing for long has not been observed or not taken in women as a vote bank, which is almost like 50% vote bank of India, number one. Number two, it has not been really in the highlight for a simple reason that for 60 long years, the turnout ratio of male and female voters have been, kind of skewed. There were always big number of male turning out and lesser number of females turning out. So that made male voters as the bigger swing impact equation than the female voters. However, in the last 15 years, everything has started changing, Siddharth. Number one, not only the female turnout has been started increasing by leaps and bounds, it is now way more than the male turnout, number one. Number two, number of female voters because of the various schemes and the social transformation, in the last 25-30 years, number of female voters has actually increased in the electoral list. So it's a double impact of sort. Not just their numbers have increased in the electoral list, their turnout is better than the males. So when you look into the final electoral framework, females have become more important than males as far as their electoral impact is concerned. That is the primary arithmetic to start the conversation, because we'll certainly move on to the issues which they impact the women more and like that. But this is where the baseline is.
Absolutely. And let's focus on that graphic that's playing up on the screen. And before I go to Sanjay, I just want to quickly get you to focus on this. Viewers, just take a look. 2024, male voter versus female voters. 330 million, just about half of the total voters projected to be part in 2024 Lok Sabha elections, 680 million or 68 crore. Of that, 330 million women voters. Now look at 2029 going up to 37 crore or 370 million. The estimates are more or less rounded off. Sanjay Kumar, is this just plain politics because the number of of women voters are increasing and their turnout is higher than the males during recent elections. Is this just pure politics, or does this also mean that our politics is making a shift, a gender linked shift for the better?
Siddharth, I'm looking at the data which is on the screen, and I don't understand why, if we look at the female voters of female proportion, proportion of female voters less than the male from 2009 till 2024 would suddenly go up in 2029 and 2047. If you look at the projections of 2047, it's a huge 10% difference.
Absolutely.
I fail to understand why this would happen, because last 50 years, we have not seen such a huge difference in terms of male-female turnout. So that's my question to the data which is being released by, the SBI research. But leaving that apart, I think why there's a lot of focus on the female voters in Indian elections now, Yashwant ji has already mentioned, if we look at the turnout of women voters, the turnout of women voters has increased enormously if we look at the 70 years of India's election journey of Indian election. Just to cite the data, 52, 57, 62 Lok Sabha elections, the first 3 or 4 general elections, the deficit in women turnout compared to men turnout used to be in the range of 15 to 18%. So which is to say, even if women are enrolled on the voter list, they were not turning out to vote. So parties were paying less attention to the women voters, and also we know that many women voters were voting on, the male voters were voting in the name of the women voter. Proxy voting was taking place. But from there, we have traveled a long journey. Indian elections have traveled a long journey. And if you look at the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, men and women turnout was equal proportion of men and women voted in these elections. That's one factor. And there are 16 states where women turnout is higher than the men turnout. So political parties have realized that women are outnumbering men when it comes to voting on the election day. And that is why women voters are in much bigger numbers now compared to the past. Second important factor, women vote is crystallizing in favor of one party or the other in different states. These are the two reasons why we see all political parties trying to send out a positive signal to the women voters through welfare schemes or through various other means.
Okay. Madan, I want to come to you for the Economist perspective before I go back to the psephologists on the panel for some follow-on questions. Madan, what does it mean in broader economic terms? Is this linked to the overall economic growth story of India? That's number one. And anecdotally, that women now have higher than was in the past purchasing power, and is there more agency in terms of decision making over the last 10-15 years that we are now seeing for the women voter in India?
No, absolutely, Siddharth. I think women are getting more empowered in course of time. And I think they are more conscious, politically conscious, and therefore reaching out to them in terms of whatever benefits are being offered by different parties makes a lot of sense. Now, from a pure economics point of view, we should realize that governments operate within a framework of the budget. And how you allocate resources, how you spend on different programs is the prerogative of the government in power. So I think what the governments are doing is they're actually dividing this entire set of benefits across different programs, different schemes, different constituencies. And one of them which has emerged is women. And we should remember one thing from the charts which you put up in the beginning. If you see the kind of benefits which are being provided, I think one part of it is being provided on the basis of necessities. When you're talking of fuel, you're talking of any other thing which goes into the household. But the second part, when you're giving kind of free transportation, you're giving cycles, you're giving laptops, I think the fact that a large number of women are now going out to work, that has made a very difference as far as the overall political setting is concerned. You're able to provide benefits which go beyond just a plain household. So today we want more women to work, more women are going out and working. So in order to, they're getting educated. So in order to enable this kind of a transformation which is taking place, I think the whole set of benefits have actually been bifurcated into one purely household, which could be affecting the entire family. And the second part is where you're actually working towards the empowerment of women. when it comes to both education as well as work. So I think that is what we are really seeing today. And it's all being done within the realm of the budget. So we give lots of benefits for different things. Picking up women as a constituency will remain something ingrained for the next couple of decades.
Offhand, Madan, would you be able to sort of go back into memory and tell us whether when did this shift in terms of allocation priorities change? Is this just something from the union budget, or did states actually take the lead in this regard?
No, I have a feeling this has been done by the states, because I do remember from memory that states like Bihar and Tamil Nadu, they have been providing things like bicycles, they've been providing laptops, they've been providing sewing machines. So I think this is something which actually happened more at a micro level if I'm talking of states. And today it has sort of been expanded even at a level of the center, because there is a bit of competition which comes up saying that if something from X at a regional level, it can also be done at central level. So I think that is how the thing is spreading. And I think it's a very positive thing when we're talking in terms of diversity, gender empowerment, gender equality, and women empowerment.
Yashwant, at international forums, gender and various activities around that are spoken about a great deal. In the Indian context, we have seen several pivotal moments in our elections, including, for example, some decades ago, cheap rice or free food becoming a key electoral element. Again, from your recall, who started this whole trend of identifying the women voters as a separate base and trying to target them through specific SOPs?
Well, women voters have been kind of analyzed in a very stereotypical way. That they tend to be more emotive, they tend to vote on emotional issue. The earliest that I remember was, after 84 election, and then in the 1991 election when midway Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated, the post-assassination waves, there were studies which had shown that, more females voted for the Congress. But that was a very stereotypical way of analyzing female voters. Our data suggests that at least in the last 10 years that we are studying that factor, that females are voting more on the real issues, schemes, the things that are being provided, on the issues of governance and at large. And they have a tendency to vote less on the other issues which have to do with the caste polarization, communal polarization, and other things at large in that way, like what the traditional political equations are concerned. So when people say that women have voted for rice or women have voted, of course, yes, these are the issues of governance. If the PDS is working fine and females are voting on that particular work that the government has done, what's wrong in that? It should be celebrated. And the latest one, which Siddharth, it's a case study for me, because in Uttar Pradesh, we realized that big number of women who voted for the BJP, they voted for saying, on the issue of toilets. And at the same time, the issue of toilet was seen as an issue of sanitation, which was not the case. Issue of toilet had a bigger issue related to safety and security, law and order. Because as we know, in the countryside, everywhere, biggest number of sexual crime against women used to happen either in wee early morning hours or late in the evening hours in the dark, when the females they used to go into the field, and getting a toilet at home ensured that they not just would be able to use the toilet, but actually they will be safeguarded against sexual crimes that are committed against them. So,
the Izzat term that Prime Minister Modi used and popularized, Yashwant.
Exactly. So when you look into that okay, toilet construction is not an issue of less of an issue of sanitation and more of an issue of law and order. And if that is an issue of governance and females are voting on that, then I guess that we need to just step back, look at the big picture, and see that probably the governance, issues of governance, issues of livelihood, issues of matter in day-to-day lives, they matter more to the females, and this is why governments are coming around in more structured way
Okay.
with policies which can, which they can attend to and they can influence their voting. Not just a one-off thing. Gone are the days जब बस्ती में जो है दारू बढ़ जाती थी, पैसा बढ़ जाता था और लोगों का वोट दूसरे दिन पड़ जाता था. Compare this phenomena to those days, 30 years back. And
Very interesting comparison, Yashwant. Sanjay, come in on this. What Yashwant is saying essentially that what was said ना, पौवा दे दिया जाता है, एक पर्चा दे दिया जाता है, एक नोट का पर्चा और उस पे वोट दे दिया जाता है. Do you agree with what Yashwant is saying, that women are serious voters? They look at specific issues while parties are responding in with SOPs and giving them, for example, in Delhi, the most recent one, 1,000 rupees, and West Bengal has also done something. Is it actually true, in your view, that the women voters in that sense are more enlightened voters?
When you say more enlightened, I am not sure whether we are trying to compare women with men or women of present day times with the women of the earlier times. So I'm not sure how we are trying to compare, but it is true that women are taking active part in politics, in elections. It's not only the turnout is an indicator, but if you look at the enthusiasm, if you look at the interest in politics, and I think social media has a lot to contribute in that. So I do get a sense that women are actively participating in elections, taking interest in elections beyond merely voting. But I also get a sense from the data that these schemes does help women in mobilizing women votes, whether it is about giving 1,000 rupees to women or whether it is giving, it is about giving gas chulha or several other schemes. And that is why if you look at various state government, whether it is a state government run by the Aam Aadmi Party like in Delhi, or YSRCP Congress led government in Andhra Pradesh, or any other government led by any other political party, all political parties are trying to roll out various schemes aimed at giving benefits to the women voters, because they all realize, and we get a sense from the data, that it makes a difference in how women are choosing to vote for the parties.
Madan, the question really that I want to ask you is with regard to the impact of such schemes, because remember, Nitish Kumar, who is now back with the BJP, came back to power and he's been in power several times. One of the key planks that he announced, which proved to be quite bad for state finances and led to smuggling and all manner of difficulties that still continue, is prohibition. And that was aimed at the women voter, and that rewarded him politically. But in all the schemes that you have seen, the Mukhyamantri Samman Yojna of the Aam Aadmi Party government announced in the budget, a new scheme in Himachal called the Indira Gandhi Pyari Behna, West Bengal wage hikes for Asha and Anganwadi workers, and of course Madhya Pradesh, that famous one, the Ladli Behna Yojna that was launched in March of last year. And the list is pretty long: direct cash, free bus rides, smartphones, laptops, scooters, cycles, gas stoves, gas cylinders, cookers, washing machines, jewelry, saris, and you could add the cuts to LPG prices to that list. But is this doable from an overall fiscal prudence point of view, and do examples like prohibition of Bihar actually are they counterproductive examples?
No, if you're talking specifically of prohibition, I think there is definitely a loss of revenue which is there for government. So it's quite different if you compare it with Gujarat, which always had prohibition. So therefore, there was never a case of saying I'm getting X amount of revenue and I'm now going to get nil. But for a state like Bihar or any other state which goes in for a drastic measure like prohibition, which definitely is aimed at probably getting favor of the women voters, there would definitely be a revenue hit which will be taken. Because most of the schemes which we're talking of, in fact, all the schemes which we're talking of is more of an expenditure outflow, something which can be budgeted for by any state or the center. But once we're talking of something which actually affects revenue, I think it's a kind of a bold decision which is taken, where at times it may work out, but it will probably work out only the moment you introduce prohibition. It could probably be effective at that particular point of time where women voters may be voting for the party which brought it in. But is it something which is going to be sustained? Because once you bring in something like prohibition, you lose the revenue. You're not quite sure in the subsequent election whether it will still be a strong enough vote clincher. So that is the kind of a chance which is being taken. So in general, I would say anything on the expenditure side, I think that's welcome, something which will always work, and it's always done within the realm of the fiscal constraints which are there. And it could be sometimes more of articulation, because the actual amount which is spent, the number of actual beneficiaries may be much lower than what we think prima facie would be the case. But something like prohibition, where you take a hit on revenue, definitely does have fiscal implications, especially if the revenue will be large. Because there are quite a few states which earn a lot of excise, a lot of sales tax, VAT rather, from liquor. So that is kind of a bold decision which is taken. So I think it's
Madan, quick follow-up on that. Quick follow-up before I go to our psephologist. What does other data as far as literacy, for example, or financial inclusion seem to suggest? Is the overall women part of our population now becoming more economically empowered, more literate, also more employable and getting more employment opportunities?
Yeah, actually, we look at data, Siddharth, we get a kind of a mixed picture. Definitely, women are more empowered. They're definitely in a better off situation. But there is still a big difference between the rural and urban women. And again, across states, if you generally look at it, if you look at the number of women who are working, it tends to be higher when you're talking of the southern states compared to the northern states. There could, of course, be social mores which also come into the picture, which could be leading to this kind of skewness. But definitely things are changing, and we're seeing this happening at different paces, at different levels. Urban is faster, rural is slower. Some states are faster. In fact, this kind of thing is also spreading to the northern states. So things are evolving, but at different pace.
Yashwant, we are days away from the announcement of the Lok Sabha election, and the BJP has a lead in announcing more and more candidates. Other parties are also doing their bit. But the question really to you is, in the election that is coming up, who do you think is the most popular politician in the women voting base all across the country?
Well, in the MOTM that we did for India today, I mean, by and large, right now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is way ahead of anybody other, not just in male but females and across all age groups in that way. But if you go into the state politics, then obviously female voters in different states do have, different leaders they like to see. So it's also a question of national elections as well as the state election. So obviously, within the state politics of Delhi, Arvind Kejriwal is loved more than the other people who are seen as the chief ministerial candidates of Delhi. Same goes with other people from Yogi Adityanath to Mamata Banerjee to Stalin and so on and so forth. But at the national level, definitely Prime Minister Modi is way ahead by leaps and bounds. And mind you that I guess in the last 14 years, he cultivated that vote bank in a very effortless way, because I think he also was the first one to look into the possibility of all these governance and all these schemes that were aimed directly at the females as the part of the governance, not just the Jan Dhan Yojna, but also the gas connections and everything. And as I mentioned, the toilets, which actually brought into the issue of sexual crime against women in the rural areas. So I guess that he has worked and developed that particular part of the vote bank, if I may call that term. So very meticulously, extremely carefully, and also the younger part of that vote bank as well as the first-time voter.
Sanjay, around 15% of the current Lok Sabha, the members, the MPs are women. In the state assemblies, this number is said to be lower, in single digits, around 9%. Despite the progress that women have made in so many fields of work and life in India, politics their share is underrepresented despite the most recent legal move towards providing reservation for women. Looking ahead, what do you think is likely to happen as far as the representation of women in politics is concerned, both at the center and the state level?
Certainly, the representation of women in the state assemblies and the Lok Sabha can't go up without the provision of reservation. Now it is in place. The law has been enacted. 2024 election will be without that law coming into place. So I don't expect women representation to go very high in 2024 elections compared to what we saw in 2019. And even after 2024 Lok Sabha election till 29, which is the earliest this bill can be implemented or this bill can come into place. So even after the state assembly elections held between 24 and 29, I don't think that we will see a very dramatic jump in women's representation in state assemblies of different states. So I think legislation was the only way out, and now we should all welcome that the legislation is in place, and we should only hope that this is implemented as soon as possible, because that's the only route to ensure sizable number of women in state assemblies and the Lok Sabha.
Will our politics change as a result, Sanjay?
To some extent, yes, because the debates and discussion in the parliament may be more fruitful because some more discussion can take place. We have seen noisy scenes. We have witnessed noisy scenes in the parliament at times. So if there are more women, my own sense is that wherever there are more women, we keep talking about all women police station, and the government cherish about that. So the space becomes a little more civilized compared to a place which is dominated by the male members. So I expect parliament discussion to be more civilized, more informed, if more and more women are there in the parliament and state assemblies.
यशवंत, पुरुष प्रधान नेतागिरी अगर कम होगी तो उसका परिणाम क्या होगा?
देश के लिए बहुत अच्छा होगा, समाज के लिए बहुत अच्छा होगा, हर लिहाज से बहुत अच्छा होगा। मैं बहुत ही खुले तौर पर इस बात का समर्थक रहा हूं, और इनफैक्ट जो 33% आरक्षण की बात हो रही है, इस पर संजय भाई और हम लोग कई बार डिस्कशन करते रहे हैं कि रोटेशन ऑफ सीट्स के बियॉन्ड जाकर के क्या उपाय हो सकते हैं कि रिजर्वेशंस को अप्लाई किया जाना, क्योंकि मेरा मानना है कि केवल 33% से नहीं होगा। जितनी आबादी उतना हक की जब दुनिया भर में बात होती है और जाति से लेकर धर्म तक हर कोई बात करता है, तो जितनी आबादी उतना हक महिलाओं के लिए क्यों नहीं लागू होता। और there is one more interesting statistical point as well, Siddharth, because if you look into the quality of life index, if you look into the governance index, if you look into the democracy index, and if you compare it with the rank of females who are in active politics and elected chairs, elected position, elected offices, you will see there is a direct correlation. Countries who have bigger number of elected representatives as females are doing way better on all these indices globally. So obviously numbers don't lie. There is a correlation. If there are going to be more female elected representatives in India, it is only and only going to help us in terms of economic growth, in terms of social growth, in terms of everything that we may think in the right direction.
The last word on the show to the economist on the panel, Madan. The point that Yashwant makes, taking it forward, will greater participation of women in politics, both as voters and those who are elected to power, also translate into greater participation of women in the boardrooms, for example, in the workforce, in various sectors? IT as one sector is far better in terms of the gender balance versus, let's say, traditional manufacturing, but there were different reasons for that. But do you think this will kind of lead to an overall surge over the next 5, 10, 15 years, Madan?
No, I think it will definitely happen. But again, I would say it will happen at a different pace, because what we have seen in the services sector, there definitely seems to be greater representation of women, not just as employees, but also at the management and at board levels. But when it comes to manufacturing, I think it's a slower process which is there. We are seeing it more at the board level, less in terms of the employees rather. So I think this kind of a transformation is taking place, and I think it's good for the country when there will be harmony between the policymakers at the top, as well as the people who are doing the actual production of goods and services in the corporate world. So I think we are all moving in the right direction, which will be good for the economy.
Absolutely, and there is no doubt with regard to that. Viewers, it's very clear that a major shift in India's electoral landscape is anticipated as far as the gender equation is concerned, and I'm not even talking about the possibility of one India in terms of elections. We'll have to wait for the next term of the Modi government to see what happens on that. But for now, Yashwant Deshmukh, Sanjay and Madan, thank you very much for your time with us today as we decoded for our viewers why parties are chasing India's women voters. We'll be back with more. Until then, goodbye.
Prime Minister Narendra